Hi, I'm Scott. Welcome to Big Guy Boards. I'm going to be talking about some of the challenges that bigger or heavier people face when riding small waves. For me, the first issue for bigger people surfing smaller waves is how much energy the wave produces. Generally, you would say as you scale a wave up, it would have more energy. And for me, this is a theory. I'll be really interested in your comments on this. But my theory is the smaller a wave is, the less energy it's producing, and therefore the less energy there is to physically move someone, a bigger person, on the wave. So that can be a really big problem. Are there any ways around that? Are there any things you can do? There are a couple of techniques which I'll share at the end which might help you a bit more on the wave and how to harness the energy of the wave. So if you look at the design of any surfboard, but specifically a small wave surfboard, what some people like to call grovel boards, the general consensus is you should up your volume when getting a grovel board. The thinking behind that is you have more float in a higher volume board, which will therefore be easier to carry you, be easier to catch waves and maintain or generate speed on the wave. Counterintuitive to that, have been experimenting with much smaller, less volume waves. And my thinking behind this is, if you want to be riding a shortboard in smaller waves, you want the board to fit into the pocket. And for it to do that, generally the waves you're going to be riding, the grovel wave for me is kind of around stomach high and below, I'd say, kind of chest to stomach high and below, depending on the power. That's when I'd be groveling. And in a wave that size, if you've got a board that's over 6 foot, it's just not going to fit into the pocket or the power source of the wave. So I've been really experimenting with bringing the length and therefore the volume of my boards down. And what I found when doing that is a smaller, less volume surfboard actually helps. So I'll go into more specifics about that at the end. So I think fins can be really underestimated. Some surfers are very aware of fins. I personally, until recently, haven't paid much attention to fins at all. I just get the stock, cheap plastic fins. I don't really think that much about sizing, but I've just done another video on this recently, and I'm starting now to really look at fin sizing and how important it is. And I think it's something that really needs consideration when surfing, especially for smaller waves. And I've used this example in a previous video. If you look at Noel Salas, he's just over 70 kilos. So for those of you who don't know, Noel Salas does surfboards reviews. He's an ex-pro. His channel Surf and Show is excellent. I recommend you check it out if you haven't. He's 70 kilos, so he's under a quarter of my weight. But when he's testing fins with grovel boards, he often puts the biggest fin you can get, a large in Futures or sometimes XL in FCS. He uses those kind of fins in his boards to help generate speed basically, and just get that drive out of the board that he needs in smaller waves. So following this, I'm now going to give some advice on how us bigger, heavier people can make the most out of some of these points I've made. So the first thing I talked about was power and how powerful the wave is. The smaller the wave, the less energy it has, which is going to be more difficult to move a bigger person. So what can we do about that as bigger people? There's a couple of kind of technical things you can employ to try and get around that. So one thing is thinking about your takeoff. So if you imagine a peeling wave, peeling from whichever way that is on your screen, right to left is it? So it starts breaking here, it's peeling that way. If you're taking off away from where the wave is breaking, so the wave's breaking here and you're taking off across onto the shoulder, if it's a small wave, you're already at a disadvantage because it's a less powerful area of the wave, and you're really going to struggle to maintain any speed or flow. If you take off here and try and cut back on a smaller wave, because there's so much less energy, generally if you try and do a cutback, you're not going to then be able to make the rebound and keep moving. So my first bit of advice would be, on a smaller wave, look at where you're taking off and try and take off as close to the energy source, the curl of the wave, as you possibly can, you can then try and maintain your speed and energy by sticking with the curl of the wave. So that would be my first piece of advice regarding technique. So surfboard design is really important. So I've mentioned the length of the surfboard. I've been experimenting with this quite a lot. So I've experimented with, I think I tried maybe in a 5.8, possibly a 5.9 or 10. It was way down on volume, so I usually ride around 40 litres, between 40 and 43 litres surfboards. This was around 38, maybe less. But it was a really small, as I say, it was around 5.8. The shape was similar to a kind of mini Simmons. So that was my first experiment with short boards in gravel waves, and it was just unbelievable. It was a revelation. I had no problems at all paddling the board into the wave. It just fit into the pocket so much more nicely and just felt amazing. I felt like I could really kind of harness the energy of the wave on a smaller board, which, you know, previous to that, I think the board I was on previous to that was a 6.0, and I think I've had even longer boards than that to try and pack in more volume, but it's just not working for me. And I found now gravel boards need to be, for me, definitely sub 6 foot. I've got one come in, a custom shape, which is a 5.10, I think, again, which is a bit lower down on volume. I think it's under 40 litres. If you're not that confident paddling, you know, if you're beginner intermediate, you still haven't got your paddle fitness, that might not work for you. I'd probably recommend getting something longer, just to getting used to, you know, paddling into the wave, catching the wave, build up your fitness. But I'd say if you're intermediate plus, intermediate to advanced, you've got a good paddle fitness, I'd definitely recommend just give it a try. Hire a board, try and get a demo board from one of your local shapers. Just try it out and see. It might kind of change your surfing a bit and might make riding small waves a bit more fun for you. Fins! So I've talked about fins in a previous video. I'll put it up here. But specifically for gravel waves, you know, really small waves, I think they're so important. You need a really decent sized fin to give you that drive and speed. I've mentioned Noel Salas, so 70 kilos. For a lot of his gravel boards, he goes to the biggest size fin. So he should be on a medium fin, possibly a small to medium, but he's going large to get that speed. Now, as bigger people, if you're 95, 100 kilos plus, you don't have that option. You're already the biggest fin that we can use at the moment, generally, is already too small for us. So we're at a massive disadvantage with fins. So what can we do about this? I'm currently actually experimenting with fins myself, and potentially looking at manufacturing a slightly bigger fin for a bigger person. So watch this space. There's going to be reviews on bigger fins, but I think it's just going to completely transform gravel surfing. I think that's one of the big factors for why bigger, heavier people really struggle in smaller waves, is the fins we're using.